leaders, we are looking at putting more content from the Ontario Chamber, the Canadian Chamber, but also curating other content for business owners to figure out how to build, cash flow budgets and plans and be able to adjust them for all of the changes that are going to go through their business, and to provide peer-to-peer help groups to figure out just what is the best way to be planning for this. Right.
One of the things I heard the city of Barrie is doing, and I don't know if the chamber's also the whole digital footprint part of this is so that a lot of businesses who are normally used to the day-to-day customer service forward-facing, and now they have to adjust to be more digital friendly. So from that perspective, I don't know if the chamber's prepared to help with some of those things, but over the past few days, talking to different people, that seems to be a little bit of a gap, just to how to convert to virtual payments or ordering systems. So when people are converting to, say, takeout or other styles of online business, they just don't have that platform infrastructure.
Yeah, it's absolutely a great idea, Andrea, and I think that's one of the areas we're looking. Even getting the chamber to use Zoom, has taken a couple of days as everybody just gets used to it. And if you just imagine at a business level, that trickles down to order entry, to supply chain management, payroll, and of course, at some point, our bandwidth is going to run out, right?
Well, and that is a big and real issue that people are already facing, because the system, even in the areas that have broadband, it's not been built with the assumption that the vast majority of people will be working from home and or video and audio conferencing. So I've certainly been on a number of conference calls in the last couple of days where people have just maxed out, where people have been phoning in, not being able to get through, busy signals. We all have to be patient. We're living this real time. And it's certainly, what's interesting is really getting people in the cities and in the South in particular to understand the frustrations that those who don't have even this level of infrastructure in terms of broadband, et cetera, what they're facing every day that we're only facing now that we're seeing this. And so sympathy and importance of the provincial government's push into expanding broadband into rural and remote.
Yeah, it's interesting. There are still places in southern Ontario, I'll say south of North Bay, for instance, in total, but areas near Arnprior, Bancroft in Ontario, where there is no cellular service whatsoever. You can drive along that highway for the better part of 30 minutes without any real connectivity.
I think Bernard Lord was in the office recently talking on behalf of the Wireless Association of Canada, and he was saying that if I can use the analogy, if I can remember, if the use of broadband right now is a 6-lane highway, by 2024, the requirements in Canada, notwithstanding the current situation that we're going through right now, but just on a normal basis, the requirement would be a 24-lane highway. In terms of the amount of broadband that's going to be required in this country going forward. So the investment, Rocco, you're right, is critical, not just in rural areas, but also in urban areas as well.
No, throughout. If we get to the Internet of Things, if you've got autonomous vehicles, if you look at AI, the use of big data, that's all massive bandwidth hogs. And we're nowhere near the infrastructure that will be needed to deliver that kind of future.
Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is 5 after 10. I'm looking at 78 attendees plus ourselves. So I'm suggesting that we get going. And obviously, the conversation we've been having is very indicative of, I think, the good conversation we're going to have for the next 50 minutes or so. So good morning, everyone, all of our attendees. Thank you very much. My name is Michael Badham, and thank you all for joining the Barrie Chamber today for what we're calling a practical Q&A session for businesses. We're going through some trying times right now that we've never seen before. This is effectively war. And the Barrie Chamber wants to stand united with all of its members to fight this battle against COVID-19. I've been saying to people that humans are not well built. Our DNA isn't well built to deal with dangers that we don't feel or hear or see or touch. But the wolf is at the door. And it's now time to act, and all of our governments are telling us, all of our leaders are telling us to do that. The Advocacy Committee of your chamber met last week to discuss how best to disseminate information to our members. Things are changing so quickly every day that even the topics that we're going to talk about today are really evolving. And so we thought that as the first of a series of webinars for our members, in which we're going to try and disseminate information to you about how to plan your business, how to plan for the disaster, how to downsize, and then how to recover. We're going to start to provide as much of that information as we can. Today, we've got a group of panelists on hand to answer your questions. They are leaders from the legal and HR fields, as well as Rocco Rossi, representing the Ontario Chamber, and a number of elected officials. So we are grateful for their time and attention. What I'm going to do is ask each panelist to introduce themselves. 2 minutes, please. And everybody, I think, knows pretty well who you are, but a couple of minutes, and then we will go straight to Q&A, and we will go from there. So perhaps I could start, Janice, with yourself, and then I think the panelists have an email that was sent out. We'll just run through the order that's in that list. If anybody doesn't have it, I'll introduce you. So thank you, Janice. Over to you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Michael. And thank you, actually, for the Barrie Chamber for inviting me to participate. I think we all need to come together and assist in a crisis situation like this. And our team's been working around the clock since last week when they announced the school closures, trying to assist our clients with all the different types of strategies to deal with the COVID-19 situation in their workplaces. So I have a business called HR Performance and Results, and essentially we're a full service HR firm. We help clients and assist them in all areas of HR, including developing health and safety programs, HR policies, advisory services, ensuring compliance with employment legislation, and everything, all different types of HR related matters. So we've got clients in all different industry sectors, primarily actually provincially regulated organizations that reside in this province, but we have a few clients outside the province too as well. So I'll turn it over back to you, Michael.
Thank you very much, Janice. Doug MacLeod.
Good morning, everyone. I'm the first of 3 Dougs to introduce themselves. You can call me Doug M for questions. I'm an employment and labor lawyer and represent both employers and employees. I'd say most of my employers are small business employers, and I've been getting a lot of calls the last week or so. And so I'm happy to answer legal questions. That is, what are people's rights? Janice will speak to sort of HR issues, which are related, but not necessarily the same. And then I'm sure the government officials will talk about how the government's going to step in to help ease the financial pain that people are experiencing right now. So I'm looking forward to our conversation today. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Doug. Andrea, thank you so much for joining us. You've been a great supporter of the Barrie Chamber, and we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. As is mentioned, Andrea Khanjin here. I'm one of the many local politicians who we're all striving to work together on different levels of government. And we've seen really what the Ontario spirit is. and how if we continue a coordinated approach, both province and all levels of government, municipal and federal, and if we continue to work, shoulder to shoulder, we can really get out of this. But I think what would be helpful for us and the folks that have joined us on the conversation today is it would be helpful to identify, in addition to some of the things that have been rolled out over the past few days, some of the gaps that exist that you've identified, so that we can, so we would know that better, so that we can continue to fortify this coordinated effort. Because if we do it together, we can solve what the bedrock of Ontario and Canada is, and that is working together to solve this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Doug Downey, also a big supporter of the Barrie Chamber. Thank you so much for joining us. And Attorney General, I don't know that we can get much more senior input into a panel than yourself. So thank you.
Well, I think there's a fantastic opportunity to share best practices as well among the people watching. As I talk to business people throughout the riding, I'm hearing the practices that people are doing. You go, hey, that's a great idea. So I'd encourage people to, in the messaging, even send in the odd thing if it occurs to them. But look, I just want to say I'm pleasantly surprised at the nimbleness of government in terms of being able to move and respond. As soon as we find out about an issue, then we can be seized of it and we can find solutions. So as Andrea said, if there's a way, highlight issues, don't assume that we know. There are a lot of things moving at the same time. And we have some excellent staff. The public service has been top-notch, really, really impressive. So send us your ideas, but I'm just thrilled to be part of the discussion, and let's see if we can help people.
Thank you, Doug. Doug Shipley, over to you.
Thank you, Chamber, and I'm the third and final Doug of this panel. Good morning, everybody. I'm Doug Shipley, the Member of Parliament for Barrie, Springwater, Oro-Medonte. I'd like to thank the Chamber for putting this together. I think it's a great idea. One of the things I've been hearing is that people are needing information and needing some reassurance, so hopefully this helps them out a little bit, especially the businesses around the community. We're in some tough, unprecedented times right now, obviously, with health and the economy. The federal government has announced a $82 billion plan, a combined plan for economic response. We don't have a lot of the details out yet. They will be coming out soon. So today we're going to try and hopefully answer as many questions as we can. Next week, Parliament is going to try to reconvene on a schedule or a skeleton staff. We're not sure what day that is yet or who is all going. But I would like to give everybody the opportunity who's watching now, if they can grab their pens. And we still are having a staff, and we're answering emails and phone calls every single day. So please, if you do have a question about anything that's brought up today or they need any more details, we are still open. We're not open for walk-ins, but we are taking phone calls and emails. So I will give you that information right now if you have your pens handy, everyone. Our telephone number is 705-728-2596. And our email is doug.shipley@parl.gc.ca. Please send in questions. We do still have staff taking care of all issues. We're dealing with people stranded around the world trying to get home. We're dealing with some businesses trying to get them some help. But please, if your questions aren't answered today, send those in by email or give us a call. We're still here to try and help you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doug. I think that's an important lifeline to the federal government, and thank you. Perhaps, Catherine, if you could post that information on the chat and send it to all the participants, Doug's phone number and email, that would be most helpful. Thank you.
Perfect. At the end of this webinar, everyone will be receiving an email with all of the information.
Awesome. Thank you. John Brassard, welcome, and thank you so much for joining today. Really appreciate your support.
Thank you, Michael, and I obviously want to thank the Chamber for putting this on this morning. I want to thank everybody who is on this this conference call, and Rocco, it's good to have you here as well as representative of the Ontario Chamber. I haven't got much more to add what Doug said, but I will say that from our standpoint, I'm on the leadership team of the Conservative Party of Canada. We've been conferencing every day. Our shadow ministers and our leadership team is engaged with the government on ensuring that the package that was announced yesterday is dealt with in an expedited manner, and that's going to be critical during these times. So, just to reaffirm and reemphasize that it is all levels of government that are working together. All parties are working together. As Doug said, there is an expectation that Parliament will be recalled next week. It'll be somewhat similar to what the Ontario legislature is doing with limited numbers of MPs, but it's important that we get together to pass the type of legislation that's required to provide the financial assistance and alleviate some of the anxiety that Canadians are facing, not just across the country, but definitely here locally. I know my office has been dealing with phone calls from business owners. We've been dealing with phone calls from employees who've been laid off, who are facing uncertain times. And this aid package that the government announced yesterday is very limited in detail right now, but as that information becomes more available, we are certainly going to be putting it out on all of our platforms, social media, website, and making sure that people are aware of it. Like Doug, my office is open. My staff in Ottawa and Barrie are working together to deal with the issues that people are bringing to our attention. But we have limited face-to-face meetings for obvious reasons. So they're available by email and phone as well. And so, Catherine, I'll just put my phone number out there for my office, 705-726-5959, 705-726-5959. That's my Barrie office. Everything is being coordinated through there, including Ottawa. And our email address is john.brassard@parl.gc.ca. So I look forward to any questions that anybody has that's on this call, and I thank you again for putting this together.
Thank you, John. That's very helpful. And finally, Rocco Rossi, representing the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, and one of our key sources of information that we are disseminating to our members. Rocco, on behalf of the Barrie Chamber, thank you very much for the work that you're doing and assembling that information and making it available. It's I've read through all of it. It's really helpful material. It's really high quality. So.
That's really kind of you, Michael. The reality is all of that material is created by you, by the 135 chambers and boards of trade in every corner of this province. And one of the things that I want to stress with everyone, because very often we hear politicians saying, yes, we're working together, we're doing stuff together. They're really doing it this time. I mean, at all levels, all parties. This is not a partisan issue. This is Team Canada. This is Team Ontario. And we are building the plane while we're flying it. So very often you're going to hear, to your questions, the details aren't quite there yet. And it's not because anyone doesn't want to have the exact answer for you. Quite frankly, very often that is code for tell us how that detail should be written, because what we're finding is, as for instance, in the sort of definition of the EI conditions and qualifications, they want to expand it. The government clearly understands these are unprecedented times and we have to have flexibility. Help us make those suggestions. I'm on daily calls with the feds, daily calls with ministers, and the government here, also with municipal figures across the province. Keep going to occ.ca, our website. We're updating our toolkit every day as we get more details. And feel free to email with your suggestions, with your concerns, with your pain points at rocco@occ.ca. We'll get back to you just as quickly as we can. We're going to solve this together. To all of those out there with family and friends who are health professionals, God bless them all. They are so key. And also to the people stocking our supermarkets, our pharmacies, people who don't have the option of working from home. let's understand that. Let's reach out to them, thank them for what they're doing, and for those who have elderly neighbors, friends, family, I know we're going to do what Ontarians always do, and that is help each other through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Rocco. Very helpful. And finally, I would like for all of our attendees, the people joining this conference, and I now see that we're up to 95 attendees. I would also like to introduce Catherine Chabot from the Barrie Chamber. Catherine has been setting all of this up from a technology and organizational point of view. It's really as a result of her hard work over the last couple of days that we're able to do this. So thank you, Catherine, for that.
Our whole team's behind it. Julie Kraft, Kayla, Melissa, they're all on the line too.
Well, thank you all then for doing that. The way we're going to do this is we're asking participants, attendees, to ask their questions through the Q&A box at the bottom. And Catherine will make her way through those questions, either by opening up your audio and asking you to ask your question yourself, or by reading the question herself to the panelists. And so without further ado, Catherine, I turn it over to you, and let's have the first question.
Okay, the first question's from Mikhail. Ontario announced state of emergency. Royal College of Dental Surgeons of Ontario made strong recommendation for dental clinics operation during pandemic. CDSPI, insurance that covers dental clinic business, declined to cover pandemic shutdown profit loss for dental clinic owners, explaining that a regulatory institution haven't made complete shutdown for clinics. What could be done to bring attention to this issue?
I'll open it to the panelists. Any thoughts?
Well, I'll start, I guess, in terms of, I think the question as it was framed is about the regulator and not shutting them down, but then being turned to as a compensatory body. Does everybody read it the same way? So I think what you're seeing, and maybe Doug and John can address this a bit, but there are parts of the package that were announced yesterday that we're still digesting that may be able to help as small businesses if the clinics are set up that way. Would that be accurate, John?
Yeah, I mean, we're still waiting to hear the details. I know our shadow minister for small business, Dan Albus, was meeting with, I'm looking at Doug here on the screen. I guess I should be looking forward, but Dan Albus met with his counterpart yesterday, Jean-Yves Duclos, to try to get as much information and details out of the plan that was announced, the $82 billion aid package that was announced yesterday. We're still waiting for word, not just from Dan, but from the government on how that's going to play itself out. But the challenge right now is that we're seeing insurance companies use clauses within their policies on situations like this. We've certainly seen, and my office has heard from travelers who have until March 23rd now to get back because their insurance will be null and void at that point. So my expectation is that the package that was announced yesterday will address the issue of lack of insurance for small businesses, in this case, the question, as well as other insurance claims that may come forward. But I just, again, like Rocco said, we don't have the precise details of what that $82 billion package is designed to do. We know in generalities, but again, we've got to get down to the details of it.
Can I just jump in there, Michael?
Please.
Not much further to add, John, as far as context on that. He's correct that there'll be more information coming. But what we need is information like this. I think it was Rocco said earlier, we're building a plane as we're flying. We're trying to think, and the government's trying to think of every possibility and everything that's going on. We will take information like this back now to the government and tell them this is maybe something that's being missed. There's many, many different businesses, many different insurance plans out there. We need the information back from people like are the business people today as much as we need to be giving out information too. So we need to know where some of the hardships, where some of the gaps are, and we can take that back and try and fill those gaps. So thank you for bringing that forward today.
I think there's probably a broader question. The person who asked the question was referring to the College of Dentists and their insurance package. But if you think, Doug, more broadly about business interruption insurance in general and how difficult it is to make those claims, there's probably a broader issue there entirely. Catherine, next question, please.
The World Health Organization says more than 80,000 have recovered. What does recovery include? Does that mean people tested positive and are now testing negative? And what is the stats, if any, on reinfection?
So we don't have a healthcare person here. I don't know if anybody's been following the stats. I've been following them quite closely. In fact, as a financial analyst, I've built my own little model and my own set of projections. And one of the key things is the recovery rate and how quickly people recover or get reinfected. Anybody have any information on this at all and how we're doing in Canada with respect to this?
I have in front of me the health portfolio situation report that we get daily. It doesn't speak as much of the cases that have been cleared up, but I guess one piece of a little bit of good news, I did see this morning that Wuhan had 0 additional cases today. So it is showing down some significant slowdown in growth. And hopefully if everybody sticks with their social distancing right now, right across our country, that we'll also have that. But I will look that up. I don't have it. I have the global situation, which is right now, I can tell you, sorry?
There's an important issue here on the recovery, and it also has implications for businesses and for all of us in terms of the recommendations we make to employees, to family and friends in terms of how to interface with the healthcare system. A virus, as you know, because people have had flus for lots of time, recovery is you go through the period of fever, cold, etc., and then your own body builds resistance to the virus. Recovery is when your own body has brought that to an end, and in the vast majority of cases, there is a fairly short recovery period as the body does that. Then in extreme cases and people with underlying conditions, it can lead to very serious respiratory consequences. And as we've seen even in Barrie with the first death in Ontario, it can lead to fatalities. The notion of reinfection, we just started hearing this morning that, again, it's going to take probably 12 to 18 months to have a flu shot developed that will inoculate people against it. So there could, in effect, be a second wave. And people who have the flu, once you've built those antibodies, it's unlikely that you would be reinfected, but others certainly might be. So the net out of this is you shouldn't, in the first instance, be going to emerge if you think you have symptoms of COVID-19. You should be calling Telehealth Ontario. You should be calling your doctor. You will go through a set of self-assessment questions, and based on the results of those, your travel profile, who you've met, the nature of and the severity of the conditions, underlying conditions, they will then likely refer you to one of the assessment centers. The last thing that people want to do is send you to emerge with then the potential of infecting others or being infected by others, because even if you end up testing positive, in the vast majority of cases, you're simply going to be asked to go home and self-isolate, because at this point, there isn't a treatment for it. And it's only if you are in extreme circumstances where ventilators are going to be required, where respirators are going to be required, that you're then going to be hospitalized. And so we don't want to overwhelm the healthcare system with people saying going and just test me because.
So I just want to add to that, Michael.
Yep.
One of the things that and we've been getting a lot of calls about the COVID-19 outbreak, the signs, the symptoms, and we always defer to the local health authorities who are the experts. And in this case, in our area, it's the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit. There's a tremendous amount of information that's available through them. I know I have been, and I'm sure the others have been, posting information on all our social media sites. RVH has come out, the Royal Victoria Hospital has come out with tremendous information. There is a ton of information out there, and I would defer to the health experts rather than any of us on this panel if you have specific questions related to the virus, the outbreak, and the signs and symptoms as well.
If I can just briefly add what we're recommending employers do, the government introduced, I believe it was on Monday, an online COVID-19 self-assessment tool. So what we're recommending employers do is they send out the link for the online self-assessment tool along with the public health department number, as well as telehealth too, and the local hospital as well. And encourage employees that if they're experiencing any of the symptoms, not to come into the workplace if they're still obviously not working remotely, and to direct them to those resources first, and then to notify the employer so they can then figure out the next steps.
Awesome, thank you. That's very helpful, everyone. Catherine, next question.
Okay, question to Doug MacLeod. Is temporary termination the valid term to let staff go? Should small business owner give a letter to employee in this case and pay termination pay?
Yeah, that's a question I've been getting quite a bit lately, and it raises the idea of a temporary layoff. So we don't know how long this pandemic's going to take and how long we're going to have to be self-isolating. So a lot of employers, particularly employers like restaurants who've been ordered to shut down, they're deciding whether to temporarily lay off people. So the starting point is the employee's employment contract. If they've signed one, not all employees have, but if they have, starting point is there. The employer may have the right to temporarily lay off under the term of a contract with no notice. It's not very common, but it's in some contracts. Otherwise, generally a temporary layoff is a termination at law. There are exceptions, however. So if you're in an industry where layoffs are common, such as a construction industry, that wouldn't apply here, but that would be an exception. If the employee has a history of temporary layoffs at the workplace, that may be an exception as well. I think there will become a legal distinction between a temporary layoff caused by a business that has been forced to shut down and one that hasn't. So there's a concept in employment law called frustration of employment, which means if one party can't provide the side of the bargain, then the contract comes to an end as opposed to being terminated. Usually it's on the employee side. So if an employee becomes totally disabled and they're unable to work, then their contract becomes frustrated because they can't supply work. In this case, it's from the employer side because they're no longer allowed to operate. So what I've been seeing is people have been trying to continue to employ employees for, say, the first week or two. But now it's becoming clear that this self-isolation is going to be probably much longer than that. So the government's stepping into the vacuum. So There's enhanced EI coming. The government announced a 10% wage subsidy if employers decide to keep employees on. I don't think most employers think 10% is enough. That's not going to incent them to keep employees. So this is a very fluid situation, and the government's stepping into the void, and a lot of the legal rights and concepts in the past just don't apply to the situation. So it's going to be interesting to see how the courts deal with this, because people are being laid off starting Monday, and they're going to continue to be laid off. I think crunch time is going to come at the beginning of April. So even, I know Alberta stepped up yesterday and decided they would provide some direct financial support immediately while the EI legislation gets amended and put into place. So sorry, I can't give you a more definitive answer, but it's a very fluid legal situation at the moment.
And if I can just jump in for a second, Doug, you'll see our legislature for Andrea and I is convening today with limited numbers, and they'll be dealing with some employment law related issues. It's 1 o'clock today, they'll reconvene. The other thing though is that I'm getting calls into the office, and employers are asking whether they have to do a record of employment. Can you address whether they have to do an ROE?
Again, I'm not sure of the details of the new federal legislation, but normally you don't, the employee should just apply whether they have a record of employment or not. So if they've been laid off or terminated, they should apply online. There's the capability to, you don't need to go into Service Canada offices, and as long as we're self-isolating, I think online is the best way to go.
If I can just add to that too as well, because certainly the calls that we've been receiving, companies are already in the process, and many clients have already started to lay off. There are 2 key programs that I highly recommend that everybody take a closer look at. The first one is called SUB, S-U-B, Supplementary Unemployment Benefits, that allow an employer to top up the difference between what they'd be eligible to earn through EI, which is 55% of their income up to the maximum of the weekly maximum. And it will allow them to top it up between 55 and 95% of their salary. So if they did issue a temporary layoff, they, prior to making that decision, if you fill out the registration form to register it, as well as fill out the sub-plan details. We contacted Service Canada yesterday. They're working around the clock. They told us that they're trying to approve them within 48 hours, which is fantastic. And it will allow you to at least contribute to their income while they're on a temporary layoff. Because a 55% decrease in their salary is really going to cut deep for most families. And if you are able to even provide an additional amount, even if it's the difference between 55 and 65, then that will help your employees and their families as well. The second program is called a work share program. And they have amended that program to include certainly the crisis situation with COVID-19. The application process is much longer. So Rocco and Doug, and if everybody can actually maybe bring that forth to look at the application process, it takes at least 30 days. And if you have a decline in your business and you'd like your employees, you bring them back and you only have 3 days a week to offer to them, then it allows you to bring them back, work 3 days a week, while the employee can still actually collect unemployment for the other 2 days. That's just one example, but that's a program that I would really encourage everybody to take a look at as well.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Doug MacLeod. Very, very good. I mean, it's not a good answer, but I mean, at least it's current for what all the issues are. So I appreciate that very much. Catherine, next question.
This one's from Crystal Taylor. I have 2 locations in Barrie and will not be able to sustain both. I have 3 years left in my lease. What are my options and how do I handle it?
And if I may add a little bit to Crystal's question, just reviewing some of the other questions that are kind of similar. You know, many clients asking when are the timeframes for implementing packages? What kind of packages are available for what I would call solopreneurs, people who work for themselves in their own business but don't qualify for EI and don't have any employees. And I know these packages were just announced yesterday, and there's a lot of details outstanding, but would anybody like to jump in and talk a little bit about, and I think that's part of the purpose of this webinar actually, is to think, okay, how are we going to get information specifically about these packages to people that are asking these questions? Anybody care to jump in on that, John?
Yeah, I'll start on that. Again, just to reiterate, Michael, that the package that was announced by the government yesterday is an $82 billion package, $27 billion of which will be near-term relief, direct financial relief. The rest of it, tax relief, GST, for example, and there's a whole series. And a lot of that information I posted on my website at johnbrassard.com. You know, in terms of the timing of the package, this is the difficult question at this point, because the magnitude of the situation that we're facing right now, and combined with the fact that the government has effectively shut down, I think, you know, the reality is that we need to temper our expectations into just how quickly this is going to roll out, because under normal circumstances, for EI, for example, there's a 6-week waiting period. And given the current situation, is that going to be longer? So, you know, any expectation that money is going to be flowing out the door, and I believe the government is trying to do everything it can to expedite the package quickly, but just the sheer magnitude of the situation is going to be difficult for them to do that. Now, with respect to EI payments for entrepreneurs, sole proprietors who wouldn't normally qualify for EI, the announcement yesterday, I thought was very clear that there will be funds available for those entrepreneurs who don't normally or wouldn't normally qualify for employment insurance. And again, you know, as Rocco said at the onset of this webinar, we have to wait for the details. We're certainly pushing the government for details on this, but if there is information that is available, we will certainly put that out there. Not just, you know, we'll provide the chamber with as much information as we can, but we'll also be posting it online for people to understand how they can apply to the package that was announced yesterday by the Prime Minister. So, you know, we have to expedite this, but we also have to, as I said, temper our expectations that this may not roll out as quickly as some people need it to, quite frankly. And that's the reality of the situation. The bureaucracy is effectively shut down. There's many people, like all over the country, in Ottawa, who are working from home, and they're going to do their best to make sure that those applications are processed in a timely manner, but it may not be as timely as people need it to be, quite frankly.
John is absolutely. Oh, sorry, Rocco. Just on top of that, the emergency care benefit because I've been getting a lot of calls about this too, people who are self-employed or they have rolled out a little of the details on it. I just have a note here on it, John. It's including self-employed who do not qualify for EI will receive up to $900 bi-weekly for 15 weeks. That's the plan right now. It doesn't have timelines on it as to when you can go in, but that's what they've announced they'll be getting. It's $900 bi-weekly for 15 weeks.
Doug is absolutely right. You know, we were pushing on the self-employed category being included in whatever this expansion of the qualification for EI or EI-like payments. What I will also note is, it was interesting, the Alberta government yesterday announced, following the federal announcement, precisely because of the issues John was raising around timing, that they were going to be stepping in and bridging a couple of these programs because they could get the money to their people sooner. I know that Minister McNaughton was working on a package. It was going to come out yesterday. I'm expecting it to come out relatively soon, where we'll see what the province is prepared to do. But the other point that John has underscored is really a critical one for businesses across Ontario and across the country. And that is the amount of time that's going to be required and what things could happen that are more automatics as opposed to requiring any applications or time frame. So yes, they're talking about, you know, delay in the filing and the payment of taxes, of HST remittances, things that could, you know, that have an impact more immediately. Can we do something in terms of hydro bills? We no longer, as a province, own 100%, but we're a pretty important shareholder. Can do some things now that would be more immediate. These are all suggestions that are being put in so that we don't delay. And then obviously there are a number of municipalities that have stepped up around the province to delay, to defer property tax payments. And the issue really becomes, depending on how long this goes, these deferrals, whether it's tax payments or other things, are great if it's short. If it's longer, deferrals are going to have to then be met with actual cuts. So government's going to have to be prepared to cut some checks on this or see some very significant damage in our economy.
Thank you, Rocco. Catherine, next question.
This is from Patricia Dent. Many of my clients, startup entrepreneurs, are asking what the timeframes are like to be for implementing the package announced by the PM yesterday.
So, I mean, we dealt with this extensively in the previous question. You know, as it stands right now, there are no timelines. The only thing that is definitive is the amount of the package, which, as I said earlier, is $82 billion. They did create some expectation as to when the packages will continue to, like Doug said earlier, I think it was July, Doug, for the emergency support program. The tax deferral program, you know, in terms of personal income taxes, for example, is going to be deferred till August, until late August, until you have to pay what you owe. But the unfortunate fact right now is that there is no timeline in terms of when this the money is going to roll out. And so this is what we're working with the government on, to make sure that it rolls out in an expedited manner, because the anxiety, as I said earlier, is very real for not just business owners, but their employees as well. And so as we get more details, we'll roll that out. But unfortunately, we don't know the timeline. And again, I reiterate, you know, the magnitude of this and what needs to be done in order to get this money out the door is significant. And the bureaucracy is effectively shut down in Ottawa right now. And, you know, so people need to temper their expectations as to when this money is going to roll out the door. But I'm sure the government, it's all hands on deck, and I'm sure they're doing everything they can to make sure that we get that money rolling out. And it's important, again, as we said off the top, that Parliament reconvenes so that we approve the package quickly. And the expectation is that Parliament will reconvene next week. The Ontario legislature is convening today to deal with their package, and so we're going to do everything we can to make sure that the government has all the tools that they need to get this out the door as quick as possible.
Thank you very much, John. Catherine, if I may, I've been scanning the questions. There are a number of questions, and I'm going to address this to Doug Downey. There are a number of questions here about what is the trigger point for a complete shutdown. Is there any thought on the government closing down construction sites? You know, what about extending the social distancing for an extra 6 or 8 weeks? you know, where do you think we are at in terms of next steps, in terms of, you know, we've closed the borders, kind of what can be expected next, and where are we at? I ask you and others to, Doug, to jump in.
Yeah, as you've seen with the leadership of the Premier, he's been very clear that we're taking advice from the medical professionals. So that's where we're taking the lead from. I don't want to speculate on what they're going to tell us, because that's not my field. But I can tell you people are engaged in finding solutions to problems as they come up. We're all making sure that we have as much information as possible. We're actually hearing from manufacturers who are in different sectors saying, can we retool to help you make something? Can we do something to come forward? That's not something I would have expected. Sort of naturally. We're on Thursday right now. So to guess what's going to come next would quite frankly be foolish of me. But I can tell you that we will continue to be here. We'll continue to be working. Our offices are working virtually like this. We have Zoom calls and Skype calls, and the administration is working, and the politicians are working on the political side. So what's next is more solutions to more problems as they come. Do you want me to just really quickly address the emergency declaration, just so people understand? There are two levels to it. One is to declare the emergency, and that's just a blanket. And then there are emergency orders underneath that. That's the operational part that you see, the closing bars and restaurants, recreational facilities, that kind of thing. So if there's further movement, it'll be as a sub-order of the emergency order. But again, those decisions are not taken lightly, and we have a cabinet meeting every single day, and they last for a significant amount of time. So I hope that gives some insight into our process.
And just to add on the construction element, the Premier was asked the exact same question yesterday at his press conference in terms of what does it mean for the construction sector and the the possibility of a total shutdown. As Doug said, right now we are taking the lead from the Chief Medical Health Officer. There hasn't been a request for a total shutdown, and we're still allowing construction sites to operate. It's case by case. Basically, the Premier and the Minister had a call with all the labor leaders, and they actually, the folks in the construction sector, asked not to be shut down. So it was both their request and any medical advice we received, and we'll be keeping an open eye on that, monitoring sites case by case. If something does occur on a site, obviously, we would take rapid medical action and take the lead and advice from the medical chief officer.
Thank you, Andrea. That's really helpful. Catherine, have you got a question next up in the queue?
Yes. For Doug Downey, I know all jury trials have been suspended. Is the discussion open to closing all court proceedings for a time?
So I'll be really brief because I know we have a lot of questions. I'm in conversation every day with the judiciary. We have 3 chief justices, 1 court of appeal, 1 superior court, and 1 the Ontario court. And we have what's called a court services division within my ministry. We're talking every day about what we do next. We are really focused on dealing with people in custody, urgent matters, and emergency matters. That's where our resources are going at the moment. And we're seeing some success and some great cooperation. And I have to tell you, so many good ideas are coming in through social media, through Twitter and otherwise, from people practicing in the field saying, hey, did you think about this? So keep the ideas coming.
We are down to our last 6 minutes before 11 o'clock, and I know many of the panelists have other engagements they need to go to. I see we're at 39 unanswered questions at this moment. Some of them are duplicates. I see a number of questions on there about commercial leases and landlords, and some other jurisdictions announcing stronger measures than necessarily we've heard in Canada yet with respect to preventing evictions and dealing with that. Anything on the horizon from either the federal or provincial government on commercial leases and lease payments? And you know, I think we're talking about small businesses and restaurants, etc. Any thoughts, John, Doug?
Well, I'm happy to start. We're dealing with residential. You're hearing, we were already out there on that, so that evictions are not being enforced residentially. As we're on the call, I'm making an application to the court to confirm how that will work. On the commercial side, it's a little trickier because it's commercial agreements. And this is where I hope and have expectations that the compensation side or the resolve is coming from some of the federal package. But again, we're digesting that. We're trying to figure that out. Best thing I can tell you, and this is not me giving legal advice, but as a 20-year lawyer, communication is everything. Talk to your landlord. Talk and exchange information so they understand where you're at. And I don't know, I think Doug would agree with that.
So, I mean, absolutely. I think everybody needs to communicate with their landlord at this point. I think the landlords have to show some sense of compassion during this situation. The BDC, for example, has $10 billion at its disposal to help small businesses in terms of loans that they can give as well as part of the package. And this was over and above the package that was announced yesterday. But I think at this point, you know, listen, we all have to row in the same direction. And my hope is, and I understand that the landlords have an obligation, but having no business in their premises is far worse than anything that they can imagine. So we have to make sure that we all work together on this. And that's the I don't know from a legal standpoint, contractual standpoint, what what the leases look like, but I'm sure the legal team can answer that.
If I could just add to that, John, I agree completely that obviously evictions are not something I was looking for, and landlords are hopefully doing what they can to keep their people in their buildings. But you're right, the BDC has set up a couple good programs already. There are small business loans of up to $100,000 that can be obtained online, and there's working capital loans that they can get extra funds to help bridge flow gaps. So hopefully, with those incentives, we're obviously going to be probably facing some shutdowns. I understand that. I don't have my head in the sand, but hopefully some of the stimulus plans are going to help alleviate some of those issues. And if businesses get out there and get out front and start applying for them, and as I said, some of them are available online. Hopefully we'll be able to get around some of those foreclosures for sure.
I'm very conscious of time. I think there are now 42 open questions. There's a lot of information here. We're going to save these questions. I think the fact that we've got 95 attendees who are still listening says that there's tremendous amount of interest for what we're doing and trying to help disseminate information to small businesses. I think I'd like to, at this point, close and tell everybody that's attending, we will be going through the questions. We will be using the questions as a formation for the agenda for our next webinar, and there will be another one next week sometime. We'll try and focus on particular areas. There's a lot of questions around helping businesses get online, helping them deal with their employees, helping them figure out their recovery plan. We're going to try and find these resources, working with the Ontario Chamber of Commerce to help get small business owners, the information that they need. Again, in closing, I'd like to thank all of the attendees who joined in. I'd like to thank all of the panelists. And I'd like you to know that we are doing everything we can to help you navigate through this crisis. We are urging every business leader, every business owner, every member in the community to shift focus to the singular objective of slowing the pace of transmission of the disease. We know that both our provincial and federal governments have enacted measures that will only really be effective if everybody, all employers, step up and protect the health of our community and our province. So we urge everybody to take those steps. I know there were questions about, should I shut down? Can I shut down? And I would say, yes, please, and do what you need to do. The Ontario Chamber and the Barrie Chamber will be here to help you throughout this. Please feel free to email us and contact us. Please look forward to the next webinar that I think we will drill down on some specific topics. So without if there are anybody on the panel that has any final further comments, please, we've got probably 1 minute left.
I would just add that this Wednesday, or next Wednesday, I should say, March 25th, the Minister of Finance is going to be doing an economic update, and it's basically going to address 3 buckets: the healthcare system, and help for people and protecting the jobs and the economy. So Doug Downey and I had discussed this earlier, but we're happy to jump on a call after that, or do something like this again to address that update.
Thank you very much for that offer. Thank you. Rocco, did you have a last comment?
No, just thanks to you for doing this. Keep the questions coming. Those suggestions are what are going to ultimately determine the answer to the details on all of these points. And I have been, thrilled at the openness and the hard work and the collaboration at all levels, and all of the politicians. A big round of applause for them for really stepping up. It's in times of crisis that we see people's true character. And let me tell you, that character is pretty amazing across the board. So thank you.
Michael, just quickly, just to reiterate what Rocco said, it's all hands on deck. I know at all levels of government it is. There are no party lines here. This is about Canada. It's about Canadians, and it's about the people who are in our area, making sure that we are there for them. I know Andrea and Doug have been working extremely hard, and our staff as well are there for everybody. This is all hands on deck, and we have to make sure that we continue to work together in a nonpartisan way for the sake of Canada and Canadians. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
Hear, hear. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Stay tuned.
The Barrie Chamber of Commerce, we partnered with the Sandbox Center. So on Tuesday, there's going to be a Part 2 Barristan webinar. And on Friday, the EDC, we're going to be providing more information about surrounding government funding. And we're partnering with the Sandbox, so we have a whole bunch more webinars planned out for you.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you to the team at the Barrie Chamber and Sandbox for doing all of this. Stay tuned, everyone. Thank you.